I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. You guys have requested it, so we're going to do it. We're going to review Turn Blue by the Black Keys and Danger Mouse. The Black Keys, this is actually a Black Keys record, but Danger Mouse, who is a noted producer, who's worked with a lot of other indie artists, and really gotten a lot of fame and acclaim for his work as a producer and a co-songwriter on a lot of the albums that he works with. You know, he helped out on this record, so that we have to include him in there. I think it's just going to be part of the discussion.
Oh yeah.
But the Black Keys, that's really what Turn Blue is all about. This is the Black Keys' 8th studio record. These guys are from Akron, Ohio. You've probably heard of a few of their songs if you're not familiar with the Black Keys. If you know, first of all, shame on you. They're a good band. You know, you should go out and listen to a lot of their records. But they were in the early 2000s. They're with the White Stripes. I'd say neck and neck with the White Stripes in this blues rock kind of garage rock revival movement that was going on. And one that I really enjoyed because it's you know, indie has just ever since laptops and GarageBand became like staples in every household. I kind of feel like it's just music has just shifted towards electronica. So this is actually very, very much a welcome thing. And you know, the Black Keys, what they bring to the table as far as just being like dirty guitar-based music, is exciting to me.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Tom.
Yeah, I like that style too, and I think that the Black Keys really pull it off, and especially with their earlier albums, the kind of foundation that they established for themselves as far as their genre, their style, I think they really made themselves stand out because, you know, a lot of people have been doing that kind of blues rock revival thing over the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, it never really died, you know, it's just been a resurgence in popularity, and Black Keys have really rode that up to the success that they've achieved, and that's really come mostly over the last couple albums, Brothers and El Camino, when they started getting a lot more radio play. You know, they started playing like arenas instead of these little shows. I remember right before, or maybe even right after Brothers came out, they played at the M Shop here in Ames, Iowa. Just this tiny little venue. I wish I would have gone to that show because I know I'll never be able to see these guys in a venue that small again.
Headlining festivals now.
Exactly.
But you know, they had that one really big song that was in a few commercials back a few years ago that was on Rubber Factory, which is my favorite Black Keys album.
Oh yeah, man, mine too, totally. So, you know, coming to Turn Blue, though, it's interesting, you know, you mentioned that Danger Mouse is the producer again.
As he was on El Camino.
Yes, exactly. And that, to me, is always like, ugh, we're not big Danger Mouse fans here.
No, we're not,
because
Tom.
every single album he works on, it's like he makes it more his own rather than making it the artist's album.
He's always, or at least in recent years, seems to be listed as co-songwriter on most of the tracks. And what I imagine him is just this like Medusa that just sticks his tentacles into the songwriting process. No, you should do this. You should do this because I say it's a good idea and I'm Danger Mouse. I'm gonna sell records because it's my name, and I want you guys to, you know, adhere to this sound. And he does this thing where he allows the band to still retain their identity and their songwriting style, but he puts this very iconic brand of sound onto it, and it has this almost like James Bond-esque, like I'm sipping gin in a club, or vodka martini shaken not stirred in a club, you know, and just like there's villains walking around in suits and I'm sitting there scoping everybody out. You know, anything that Danger Mouse works on would be great for a soundtrack for a movie like that. And unfortunately, every single artist he works with, no matter who the artist is, tend to sound that way.
It's true. They end up kind of sounding the same, and it makes it sound a little bland. I mean, the moment I put on Turn Blue, the first track, Weight of Love, I was like, this, especially in the chorus, with the kind of group backing vocals, I was like, this might as well be a track from Evil Friends, the most recent Portugal the Man album.
Which we actually enjoyed that album, because Portugal the Man are a band that's eccentric enough in their songwriting that even Danger Mouse can't cover it up. Now, the thing is I've read some stuff about the Black Keys, about how, you know, when they started, they were just, you know, so definition of independent and lo-fi that they could only make the music that they were making. That's all the tools that they had to their disposal, you know, and as they've gotten more popular, money and success has enabled them to do things like with artists like Danger Mouse and incorporate other, you know, musical aesthetics like electronic music and beats and melodies and big synthesizers background into their music, and so that's what they want to do. And I totally get that. That's awesome. I like that. But there's a way that you got to do it and still make good original music, you know, and I feel like the Black Keys are trying to do that. However, Danger Mouse, if you've listened to a lot of Danger Mouse records, it all does tend to sound the same. And the thing is I think they rely on the fact that most people don't do what we do and listen to every indie artist that produces a record with Danger Mouse.
That's true. Because if you get a scope for his entire work, then you know, it's kind of cookie cutter.
It is.
But as you said in a recent review, production is not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Correct.
It's not. You have to make it fit the artist. And so naturally there are going to be some artists that fit with this mold that Danger Mouse has created, and I don't think that Black Keys are one of them. Now, I will say that I think it works better on Turn Blue than it did on El Camino.
Totally agree.
The reason for that is that El Camino was full of really raw, rockin' guitar-based tracks. On Turn Blue, they actually moved towards more of a moody, psychedelic vibe.
It has this, like, experimentalism to it. Flaming Lips-esque at times.
Yeah. Even like Pink Floyd-ish.
Yes, especially in, like, the opening track, Weight of Love. You know, a lot of the verses is mostly just this, what I would imagine a modern Pink Floyd or Flaming Lips sound like. And, and then it moves into a chorus that's very much a Danger Mouse pop rock chorus, where you have, you know, falsetto vocals from the Black Keys, but it has a lot of choral vocal layers. You know, you have the MIDI key synth in the background,
kind of that like organ hum.
Yeah, and it's just that nice polished veneer over what is actually like underneath a pretty decently written track.
Yeah.
And I found that to just, I still felt like Weight of Love. It's a 7-minute track. I feel like they accomplished a lot in that 7 minutes. It's actually one of my 2 track picks on this record, and I feel like they did well with that. After Weight of Love, you have a number of tracks in a row. Tom, I noticed that you picked the first one of the slew, but they all sounded very much the same to me. They have a big beat, a bass line, a very cool groove to them, and a very similar poppy, faster chorus in all of those tracks. In Time, Turn Blue, Fever, definitely the poppiest track on the record, and then even, you know, Year in Review with that over-distorted, really heavy beat. All of these tracks sound very similar to me. They're made like their compositional elements are it's the same key, it's the same production style, it's the same structure, everything about those is the same. Picking the first one is totally understandable, but how can you pick the, you know, you heard the same, you know, 4 minute on average song 4 times in a row. By the end of that, you must be bored.
Yeah, and I had a bit of a different experience from you on that. While I totally thought that these songs came across sounding pretty similar, I think I just attached to some of the more different ones a little bit, especially in the very last track on the album, Gotta Get Away. I really liked that track. You know, it's not reinventing the wheel or anything.
It's more like traditional pop rock song.
And it's more kind of, in that classic rock vibe. It almost gave me like a ZZ Top kind of fun, you know. And I like that because it fit, it works, and I feel like they're not taking themselves too seriously. I really, you know, this is one of those, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills moments because everyone loved El Camino. Everyone seemed to love it. I thought it was kind of lame, honestly. I thought that it sounded homogenized, the production didn't work with it. You know, Danger Mouse's production style sounds like it would work more for like indie hip hop, but he's working with this rock band. I thought that it worked better here, and I think I'm one of the few people who likes Turn Blue more than El Camino, and it's more because the songwriting style matches more. Now, I still think that there are problems with this album. I don't think that anymore Black Keys are really doing quite enough for my taste to really take it above and beyond. I think that they're writing some good tracks, but instead of making things interesting in the songwriting, they're trying to compensate for it with Danger Mouse's production, and I just don't think that that cuts it.
And I mean, he helps with the songwriting, so he's obviously steering this a bit towards a more pop vernacular, I would say. I mean, these tracks all have verses and choruses, and I get very tired of that very quick. I just have little patience for it anymore. Bullet in the Brain, I thought, was a little bit more experimental and that kind of Pink Floyd-esque, and I like that track a lot. And really, what I found was that the tracks that had more of an experimental nature to them or had like really good guitar solos, I found myself liking more than the more poppier tracks. There's a lot of those on this record. And the other thing was that I really got sick of it. Like, I felt like a lot of the choruses just sounded like carbon copies, especially in the vocal parts. And to be quite honest, Tom, as we found out several years ago, I attach a lot to vocals in music when I hear it, and it just didn't seem like a very convincing performance, especially when it sounds very similar to every other vocal performance on this record. So that definitely brought me down, I think, a little bit lower than where you're at.
Yeah.
Tom, what were you thinking about giving this record?
I'm going 72.
Okay, I am significantly lower, a whole step, 8 points. 64 is what I'm going to go here. There's too many things that bothered me, and I just really didn't like a lot of these tracks. There's only a couple tracks I really want to come back to later on this year. So, that being said, this is a 68 from Velocities in Music. Pretty indicative that this is not an album we would recommend. It has some issues to it, and you know, for what it's worth, the Black Keys have now reached kind of like the peak popularity. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have opinions and thoughts on this record, and we'd love to hear them at www.velocitiesinmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let Tom and I know which records coming out now or really ever you'd like to see us review on this channel. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.